Welcome back, everybody, to the Innovative Agency. Sharon Toerek here with you today. And as I'm sitting here about to have what I think is going to be a really interesting conversation with today's guests, it is the beginning, almost the middle of October 2025. So we are in the thick of Q4, which I know talking with many agency owners feels like make it or break it time for all of you in terms of either hitting your goals for the year or feeling like you're ready to turn that page into the new year. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation because I think a lot of you are looking for reasons to feel a little more secure about next year or a little more certain about next year, no matter what that means, whether it means the numbers are going to be stable but lower, whether that means it's go time and you need to think of a Hail Mary that's going to get you where you need to go, all of it. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about turbulence in the agency world, and let's talk about hopefully the spots of optimism that might be out there in the market for you. And here to help me do that, Brook Shepard, I want to welcome you to Innovative Agency. Brook is CEO, founder, and co-owner now of Mason, which is an independent agency in New York and in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. So we were doing a little bit of chat pre-record. We're sort of talking about the climate briefly for agencies right now, and you expressed a point of view about what it's like right now out there for people making the decisions on marketing spend. Your example was about you know, venture capital and their decision-making process, and we also talked a little bit about uncertainty and how that impacts agencies and agency owners. And so I guess I want to start there. I feel like you are probably having a lot of conversations with decision makers at your clients, either the ones whose hands you're holding, who you already work with, or the ones who you'd like to work with about the environment out there. And so I guess, how are you feeling about the way the year is going to wrap up, for agencies, and what Q1 might start to look like for next year?
I'd like to say it's always darkest before the dawn. It's not. It's not that gloomy out there, but it is. There is uncertainty, and there's two pieces of uncertainty that I see. So our clients tend to cluster into two verticals. What we're known for originally was higher education, so universities that need new graduate students to apply to their doctoral programs, or undergrads, or high school students to apply to their undergrad programs. And the other part of it are what we call emerging D2C brands. There's a lot of fashion in there. Those aren't so disparate. The truth is, those are two verticals we're in because they're two verticals that I like. I'm committed to education as a levelizing force in our society, and I like fashion. So it sort of makes sense that those would be the two things. So on the education side, there is a real serious issue that's not going to go away, which I think presents opportunities.
Mhm.
Um, we've been talking for a long time about the population cliff, which is that for a number of reasons, after 2008, people stopped having as many children in the United States.
Mhm.
So there's something like a million fewer people were born each year since 2008. As you look at the 13 or whatever it is years since then, and you compare it to the 13 years before then, it's about a million fewer people born each year on average.
Mhm.
Though that cohort, my son was born in 2008. He's applying to colleges now.
Right.
He's going to be the last cohort that applies to university in the United States with a population boom behind it. After that, there are a million fewer people born each year.
Mhm.
So what that means is that there are fewer people to apply to universities. That is just a mathematical fact of the issue, and it's going to start soon. It's going to hit college, hit high schools 3 or 4 years ago. It's going to hit colleges next year and the year after that, and it's going to hit graduate schools 4 to 5, 6 years after that. That is a demographic fact of what's happening. Um, the obvious solution to that would be immigration, but that seems not as likely in our current climate for whatever reason. So on that side, on the higher ed side, I don't see that as pessimistic. I almost see it as the strong will survive. Community colleges that provide great value for their, where my mother got her degree from, are going to
Mhm.
be okay. places, elite institutions like where my father got his degree from will be okay. I'd be worried about if I were running a school. I'd be worried if I were in the middle of ground of all that. I'd be worried if I were a average or below average liberal arts college in 10 miles outside of New York City, right? And I'm not going to name names, but NYU is going to be fine. 10 miles outside the city, I'd be a little more worried.
Mhm.
But I see that as an opportunity through consolidation in the industry and for people being more nimble about the degrees they're going to offer to grow, knowing that not everyone is going to survive because there are 13 million fewer people to go to school now than there were in 2008. That's mathematical
Mhm.
fact. So if you're aware of that, that creates an opportunity to say, how can I change my course offerings to suit what students are looking for now? So that sounds negative. It's a demographic reality that we have to live with. And I've been talking about that on stages for a decade now because you can see it coming in the data and it's going on. So that's the first part, Sharon. Does that track? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, well, here's what I'm taking away from that, that if you're an agency owner representing clients in a particular vertical, that intense focus and understanding of a client industry helps you understand the demographic, economic, other trends that you need to understand so that you can spot the pockets of opportunity. You just outlined specific pockets for your client vertical. And what listeners of the show know I love to do is translate guest advice for any size agency, no matter where they are on the spectrum. And I think we can all take a lesson from that, which is that putting the time in to either focus on a niche or at least understand a particular niche helps you sort of crack open these corners or spots of opportunity and makes you able to capitalize on them for
I
your
would hope.
clients and therefore as an agency, right?
I would hope. Yeah. Thank you. The
Yeah.
the the other side of it is that we sort of talked about before is so the other side is are what I'm going to call emerging direct to consumer brands, and that could be $20 million brands, it could be $50 million brands, it could be $2 million brands,
Yeah.
and a lot of those are VC backed. And what we've seen in the last couple of years in that part of the business is what I'm going to say generally is a relentless focus on what our clients are calling efficiency. And the opportunity there is trickier, right? Because I can't change demographics in higher ed.
Hmm.
But efficiency in the D2C, direct to consumer space, is generally defined by clients as ROAS, return on ad spend. I mean, not always. People have a CAC or they'll talk about ROI, but generally, when people talk about efficiency, they mean lowest cost of getting customers. And
Right.
one of the things I try to coach my clients through, and I'm not always successful about it, on the D2C side, the emerging direct to consumer side, is that efficiency as defined by ROAS, I think, is not a great idea.
Mhm.
And let me just, and I think it's occasioned by interest rates that have been persistently higher than recent historical norms over the last couple of years. I think those
Mhm.
are going to come down, and I think that's a big spot for optimism. But what efficiency means, if you make phone cases for iPhones or eyeglass cases, if you make a widget, the way, and you need to be as efficient as possible because the board has told you we're not raising any more money. This is what we have to play with. That's it.
Mhm.
We need efficiency, and efficiency is ROAS. The way anyone in my spot is going to do that is we're going to leverage existing customer data. We're going to remarket to existing customers, and we're going to say, please buy another widget. We've got an improved widget. We've got a widget in a new colorway. Come get it. And you're going to
Mhm.
buy, that means you're going to buy your brand name on Google. It means you're going to do PMAX campaigns that lean heavily into existing audiences, and you're going to do remarketing across social. That will give you a very good ROAS. What it doesn't do is introduce you to new customers. And there is a finite number of times you're going to buy something from someone on average. And so one of the things we like to talk about, I can tell this in different ways, is that ROAS is sort of a vanity metric. It's like the bicep curl of overall health. It's not that it doesn't look good and feel good, but it doesn't. You're not really any healthier if you can curl a lot of weight. Probably running or bench pressing is probably a better metric. Sorry to get so dude about it, but it's a vanity metric, ROAS. And so we'll say to clients, and I haven't mastered this. We'll say something like, client, you've asked us to focus on ROAS. We've mostly hit your ROAS targets over the last year. Some months we've exceeded it, some months we haven't. We've mostly hit your targets. And you're judging us by that. And you're saying in your dashboard that that's a green light, like check, Mason did a good job with ROAS. but your underlying business isn't healthy. It's not growing. Maybe those indicators are not green. Maybe they are red or flashing yellow or orange, whatever the color is in streetlights. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe other things are things we should be looking at. Maybe we should be looking at new customer growth. Maybe we should be looking at the percentage of our audience that is new customers. Maybe we should be looking at contribution margin. Maybe we should be looking at anything other than being relentlessly efficient for ROAS. And another way to talk about that is we have a client that sells $6,000 suits to start, the starting price. The average customer buys 4 suits from this brand. Some people buy more, some people buy fewer. The average customer buys 4 suits. So if they're consumed with ROAS, what we're going to do as a tactic, given their goals and the strategy of maximizing ROAS, what we're going to do is to focus on remarketing to existing customers and say, buy another suit. By definition, those people only have 2 more suits to buy on average, right?
Mm.
Whereas a new customer might cost more to get and might look worse in ROAS, but by definition has 4 suits to buy from you. And 4 times $6,000 average suit price is a lot more money than 2 times $6,000 average suit price.
Mm.
I think it's $12,000 more. So that's a big thing that we're seeing in the space and trying to sort of counsel people through and saying, don't look, if you're going to hold me to ROAS, you're going to hold me to ROAS. But let me
Mm.
suggest to you a different path to grow that doesn't focus just on what you're calling efficiency. I don't think that's efficient to focus on ROAS. I think they heard it on a business podcast somewhere. And so I think that other thing, we can define efficiency in other ways that will have long-term growth. I think the people that can deal with that will be more successful coming through this recession. And I think
Got it.
that but the part of it is I have to caveat that is I've never run a business that sells physical goods. My capital is people. And so I don't actually understand personally. I understand intellectually what it's like to deal with a client and have new tariffs come on from a different market and have to find a different production facility. I understand that intellectually. That's not my balance sheet. That's not what I live and breathe. What I live and
Right.
breathe is people. So I'm aware of the fact that it's more complex than me saying, don't be so efficient, focus on growth instead. But that is
Yeah.
my takeaway.
Well, that's actually a great segue into a thread I wanted to pull from what you just shared, and that is the process of building the trust or the credibility or the authority, or maybe all three of those things with your clients or your prospects that enables you to convince them to dig beyond what they think the um, easy metrics, the traditional metrics might be. Because both client industry examples you cited, an industry that's challenged because of a declining demographic, and the direct to consumer space where it's very targeted, very fast moving, has very well defined ideas about how you measure success. How do you build the relationships or build the conversations as an agency leader with your clients that cause them to pause or slow down or take a breath, whatever, to look beyond what the typical measurements of success are? And I'm asking it for two reasons. First of all, I love for us to get some insight for the benefit of other agency folks here who need help having those conversations. But also, I'm curious how you get them to see the potential of looking at things differently. So talk a little bit about that rapport building that enables you to get them to calm down long enough um, to have those conversations.
If I knew that as well as I wish I did, I'd be much wealthier, is the honest answer. The
Well, you're
sales
not
team
the only
does,
one there. I mean, yeah, yeah, I think
yeah,
that's true of all of us.
yeah. The sales team does a good job at it, right? So in the onboarding process, in the sales process, the sales team does a good job of really understanding. I'm working right now with onboarding a client I really want to work with. They're guys that have built and taken 2 companies public, and they're very impressive. And they have a new company, and I'm really excited about it. And they burned through 3 agencies. And one of the things I've said to them is, "Do you
Mm.
think it's all the agency's fault?" Like
What they say.
they said, "Good point." And I know the agencies they're working with. And I said, at least one of them is probably their fault, but the other one's pretty good. And like, so, but talking to them and just saying to them, the sales process, we do understand a client's business pretty well. But one of the things this client specifically said to me, and these are some serious heavy hitters that are backed very seriously, and they said to me again and again, Brooke, it's really nice. You talk very smoothly. You understand everything. Your salesperson Ashley knows everything about us. Your other salesperson already knows everything about us. But I'm telling you, there's going to be a fall off when I get to your operations team. Like I just know it's going to happen. I'm accepting that there'll be a fall off between you, the CEO, and the operations people. How big will it be? I want to meet them now. So I
Mm,
understand that, and he's not wrong. By the way, he's wrong in that like my sales team is not as good as the operations team at actually doing the work, right? That's
mm,
not that you wouldn't want my sales team to be like optimizing campaigns. You would, but so that's not what they're skilled at. So I think it's about being honest with people. I mean, one of the ways I talk about it is I tell this to the staff. I've never been fired by a client for missing their goals, as far as I know. I've been fired by many clients for not telling them I was going to not hit their goals and not giving them a path to do it. Right. So,
mm,
so a lot of building trust is saying, and we can get better at this, but a lot of building trust is saying to a client, and sometimes they don't want to hear it. Sometimes they're headstrong. Sometimes they're living in a reality distortion field, like Steve Jobs, like they're off in their heads. But saying to them, I don't think you're going to hit your Q4 goals, and here's why. Here are
yeah.
three solutions, and that I can give you. Here's three other outcomes. I can maximize your ROI. I can maximize your revenue. You can go raise more funds. But I think being super open and honest with people is always a better way to do it than to be. I find that you're asking me how do I build trust. I try to be honest with people and treat them as I'd like to be treated. I'm not always successful at that, but I try to do that as a motto, and to be honest with people and say, here's the data that gives me pause about where you want to go. The other thing
Mm,
that's tactical is to never push back on anyone. I have never won an argument with anyone in my life. Like if a client, I had a client earlier today. I was in a client call, and the client wanted us to do something in their account that I thought was emblematic of an outdated approach.
okay.
I guess I could have lectured them and told them they were wrong, but instead what I said was, I totally agree with you that that's a great idea. Let's make sure we implement it, and we'll see what its efficacy and its impact is in your account later. Because I gain nothing. It's going to have no impact what they want us to do. But I gain nothing by telling them they're wrong and their skills are outdated, other than making them think that I think I'm better than them. So
Mm,
so always being honest and open helps. And also just we talk a lot about like if a client pushes, don't push back. Just remove the objection and get closer to them. And they're giving you a problem because they want you to solve it. They're not listing a problem for you because they don't like you. They're listing it because they want you to solve it. So those are my two biggest points: honesty and no arguing.
Well, I think the honesty part is something I'm glad to hear you say, because not because I don't think agencies are honest, because the ones that we work with at my firm are, and I've never met one that I know is knowingly not honest. However, churn happens for a reason, and I don't think it's lack of honesty. I think it's lack of hard conversations. I think it's the client and the agency not having the early difficult conversations about what their expectations are, so that, like you just gave an example of a very frank discussion with a new client that was entirely revealing as to expectations. And that was, we don't want to be handed off to operators after your salespeople have done, their smoke and mirrors, who are not as impressive. And I've heard that story a million times. We got your A team at the pitch, we've got your B and C team now in the day to day. It's a story as old as time in
It is.
agency land. But I think part of that is that neither side's coming to the conversation being fully transparent or honest about their expectations, which is, this is how we think we need to measure success. If you don't think that's the right perspective, tell us now, and either we'll choose somebody else who does agree with our perspective, or convince us that your perspective is one we, need to be considering. Anyway, I think that lack of brave, candid conversation at the beginning of the relationship is the reason why we see so much churn between agencies and clients once the metrics don't line up after month 3, month 6, month
It's
12,
month
whatever.
three. Why haven't you tripled my business? It's been 3 months.
Yeah.
There's I appreciate that. I don't. We do clearly outline in our sales and onboarding process our view of how to grow a business, and so you're right that and we um, clients are self-selecting us because they agree with what we're saying. What we don't do is change our pitch to sound better for someone or to talk about a different thing. Like we have a consistent message that we go to market with our prospects and our clients.
Mhm.
So you're right; they're self-selecting us through that process, but they might be selecting us for different reasons. And you know, we usually lose clients in the first 30 days because there's some horrible mismatch, or we keep them for years and years and years. We have clients for 15, 16, 17 years.
Mhm.
So, and not everyone, but generally there's a mismatch up front, which can come from all sorts of different sides. And when you're doing well enough, knock on wood, it could all fall apart tomorrow. You get to recognize because people have red flags about hiring agencies. Agencies have red flags about prospects. So we're able to see red flags, and we're at a point where we can say, nope, I
Mhm.
decline this opportunity. Thank you. This is not gonna this is not going to fly. You're not going to, you know, someone comes, this is the time of the year, we're filming this in October. This is the time of the year every year when people come to us and they say, I need to move 500,000 units at $99 a unit by Black Friday. I've been dark on marketing for the last 6 months, trying to really zero in and find the right partner. I think you're it. Um, can I do this? Oh, I need to be the 5 to 1 ROAS. And we can say, no, you're not going to be at a five. You're not like 500,000 units at like you're going to have to spend $500,000 to begin to have any
Mhm.
impact on a bottom line. And so we can have those conversations with people. And I think when we were a 5 person agency, maybe we weren't as able to do that. When you're a little bigger, you have a little more ability to be honest with people about the prospects they're going into and not let them hire you. Because that
Yeah.
relationship's not going to last. If they go in thinking they're going to be at a 5 to 1 ROAS with a brand name with no equity, it's not going to happen.
Well, and that is an example of a hard conversation that, in my view, needs to happen right away. Um, or a lot of time and money is going to get wasted, and also probably a little bit of smack talk's going to happen about why it was a bad relationship on both party sides, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
so the two segments of the economy that you shared as examples of the types of businesses your clients are in, and higher ed and direct to consumer companies. What kind of buyer behavior patterns are you seeing right now in those markets that you see as maybe spots or hooks of optimism for the businesses that you're working with?
The hooks of optimism in the higher ed are if you can give people. I'm not saying. I hope that my son goes to the best liberal arts college he gets into, and I hope he reads the classics with other people that are smarter than him, and he's smarter than them in some ways, and he has that experience.
Hmm.
I realize that that is coming from a position of privilege. That statement.
Right.
Um, there is the people are looking for degrees that advance their careers at a low price. That is what's happening, and so what we're seeing in terms of buyer behavior is people are interested in stackable degrees. They might not want to commit to a $40,000 graduate degree, but they might want to commit to a $4,000 certificate, which is 1/10 of the way to that $40,000 degree, and they can stack it together over the course of 5 years in their own time. That's a
Yeah.
piece of buying behavior. And by the way, we tell schools that, and they're often like, "Well, that's great, but we're still selling the 40 grand thing." So that's one thing: is a definite move towards ROI in their own investment, a student's ROI. An ROI a student's going to get in their investment from their own education is definitely a change we're seeing and have seen for a couple of years. And I think it's a pocket for optimism because if you can figure out a way to do that, you're going to be successful. And I don't think Stanford needs to do that, although I think they are doing that, right? But like, if you're
Harvard's doing it for sure.
Harvard is doing it, but they're doing it through a third party. Harvard's doing it, yeah. But the if you're doing it, my alma mater is doing it through a third party and also now directly. The It's a pocket of optimism. Look, in my business, I can see challenges. I feel like, again,
Mhm.
knock on wood, it could all fall apart tomorrow. I mean that I'm aware of what the challenges are in my business. The challenges are increasing automation. Any agencies out there, owners out there, if you're doing media buying, PMax and Advantage Plus shopping are inferior products that these monopolies are forcing us to use that reduce choices among the professionals that buy the media to have
Mhm.
worse outcomes for clients. That's just true. I, and I have a plan to deal with it. Because if I didn't have a plan to deal with it, I would just be constantly degrading my services and my price and doing a worse and worse job for clients. I have answers around being strategic, and I feel like I'm pretty clear about what those challenges are, and I could be wrong. And I feel like I know how to provide value for our clients to grow their businesses given that landscape. And the answer is not doubling down on more control to Google. If you're aware of these things as a leader at a school, I think there's an opportunity to say, okay, this is what people want, and probably there's fewer people, if there are fewer people, because of immigration and demographic changes related to births. But maybe we can sell existing people more degrees and more certificates, and maybe we can sell them AI readiness courses. And there's all sorts of things we can do for people if we're clear and open about what the challenges are. Because if you're pretending nothing's happening, you're going to be it ain't going to be good for you, school.
Mhm.
On the go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say what I take from that really crystal example is that agencies who can help their clients slice off a piece of value that can be packaged or marketed independently of their full suite of value. And, in your example, it's a 4-year degree versus some certifications that are stackable, as you said. If you can find those slices, those smaller slices, and help your client go to market with those, then you keep the engines churning for them and for you, right? As both a
Yeah,
brand and an agency. Okay.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's hard to do because like the other thing is I'm aware of the fact even I've been I've owned this agency for 17 years. I've been doing this for 25 years. I have some gray in my hair. I know what I'm talking about. I'm open when I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm also aware of the fact that I sound like ad man. Like if I come to a client, no, I mean I know I like so I'm aware of the fact.
That's why you're here, Brooke.
But I know that when I'm talking to like a client says, and a client of mine might listen to this. A client of mine says, we need to turn off, if you are, you know who you are. They say, we need to turn off all of our Instagram ads because they're not producing results. And I say, they're not supposed to produce results. That's not their job. Their job is to introduce people to the brand so they can Google it later on Google. You can't Google something if you don't know what it is. It's a logical impossibility. So
Mhm.
if your brand search term is your best ROI key term and you're focused on ROI, how do you think people Googled you if they didn't know who you were?
Mhm.
And Instagram should be about driving that awareness as
Right.
long as we're tracking it. And the client says, great, you sound like an ad man. So, and I'm aware of that. So, like, what we've done is we've hired a tenured statistics professor from Columbia University to consult with us and to help out. And she brings a level of intellectual heft to the conversation that, perceived or not, is different than mine.
Mhm.
And we use it all the time. Like I view my job as removing obstacles to our clients' growth. That's my job. My job isn't to buy the most clicks or to make the best ad campaign. My job is to remove constraints on a client's growth. And if one of
Mhm.
the constraints is that they need to hear it from someone who's a professor instead of me, great. Like let's bring that professor in. Let's do that. So that's a way that we've had some luck talking about some difficult concepts. It's because it sounds better than me saying it, even if we're saying the same thing.
Well, and I think, we've had some guests on the show talk about the value even of performing direct research or getting third party research done in your client's consumer market as a way to have the conversation with the client about what next steps to take. All right, so what about the direct to consumer market? What are some of the spots of optimism or opportunity you're seeing for the brands that you work with in those spaces?
Luxury isn't hurting. If you could afford a $2,000 briefcase before, you can afford a $2,300 briefcase now.
Right.
Luxury isn't hurting, and the bottom of the market isn't hurting either. The middle's a little soft. Um, so what that means is if I were looking at a product, if I were a premium product as opposed to a luxury product where there's not softness, if I were a premium product, I would probably be thinking pretty hard about how to add value to my client's portfolio, my people that buy my product by offering lower priced products, whether that meant smaller versions for lower cost of goods sold or a different cheaper version of it made of a different thing in a different factory. I'd be thinking about that because I think premium's probably a tough sell right now. I also think
Right.
the creative matters more than it ever did before, and I think that if you don't have a clear creative differentiation for why your $600 jacket or shirt or purse is worth getting, I think you're going to be in a really hard spot. I mean, anyone who like we're doing some research the other day, open up your Instagram feed. If you see a like a briefcase or a
Mhm.
satchel, pause in it for 2 seconds, keep scrolling, watch the millions of satchel and briefcase ads that begin to show up in your feed. They're all the same. For me, at least, they're all like a middle-aged dude who's a little younger than I am and a little less gray and a little more handsome. He's a little cooler. He's in like the highlands of Scotland somewhere, and
Uh-huh.
he's in a motorcycle and he's got a cool bag and like they're
Yeah.
all the same. They're all. It's not differentiated, and I think those guys are gonna have a hard time. So I would think very hard about how to differentiate myself with creative and my marketing message, and how to create a product that was, in addition to my premium product, a little more affordable.
What do you think we're going to see in the direct-to-consumer space moving forward in terms of how big a role consumer-generated content plays and how big a role AI generated content, because it's easy for anybody to do. So consumers are going to use it to create their own content, which the brands are going to pick up on. I mean, according to what I see. But I'm curious, you're the one in the trenches, or your team's in the trenches of talking to these companies. What do you think the role of content created by the consumer is going to have in direct to consumer brand marketing?
So thank you. For us right now, it's huge. We talked earlier about I talked about the roadblocks that I see for my company and my industry, and so as far as I know, you might know better than me. Mason is one of, if not the only, independently owned, so no private equity, which is not bad private equity. It's just not us today. It might be eventually. We're the
Mhm.
only non-private equity firm that offers search, social, creative, programmatic, SEO, email, and recently affiliate. So we're a one-stop shop for most things. If you want a big development project, we're probably not the agency for you, but there's some
Mhm.
other things too. But so we added affiliate recently because affiliate is the way that we get to talk to creators in a more honest way about
Mhm.
being able to leverage their content and our clients' ad campaigns. And we are seeing right now that UGC works very well to the point where our creative director often hires models to act like they're doing UGC when in fact it's very scripted and directed because it feels more authentic. So we'll hire
So
actors.
meta, and I don't mean Facebook and Instagram meta. I mean the literal word meta. That is so meta, hiring them to look like they are creators creating content. Oh
Yeah,
my,
but it
all
works.
right.
But it works well. So we have to track all that and look at it in a serious way. And AI, by the way, can help with analyzing those ads. Any account manager here can tell you what ads working well. To see what ads working well, what kind of ads are working well across 6 clients over a year and a half. You're going to need robots' help for that. So that helps us with that. In terms of the AI for the creative stuff, I don't know where that's going to go. Our creative team is using it to be more productive, to produce 4 times what they could produce before without it. I think that the taste is not going to go away. I hope. Um, I think that good ideas will still win, and I don't think there's any fighting the AI in the ad space. I think if you're going to fight against it, you're going to be like John Henry trying to go through that mountain with a pickaxe. And I think you might win the battle, but you're going to that story. I don't think it's a winning battle, so I think you have to leverage it and use it.
I think that's a great place to drop the mic, honestly. Brook Shepard, I want to thank you for sharing your perspective. It's been kind of fascinating to see um, how to identify pockets of opportunity and optimism and what has felt like, a really dynamic and not in a great way year for agencies. And I've seen agencies navigate through a lot of stuff. But I've said this before, it just feels like a couple things converging all at one time that has made this a traditional, atypically interesting time. And so, whenever we can talk about opportunity and reasons to be optimistic or corners of optimism, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do that, and I'm grateful to you for having the conversation. So if folks want to know a little bit more about how to reach out and learn more about what Mason does or how to get access to your thought leadership, what are the best places for them to do that?
I appreciate that. The answer is always masoninteractive.com. You can reach out to me in LinkedIn and I will see it. But anyone that writes to masoninteractive.com, there's contact forms all over the website. We have a lot of videos up there and other podcasts they've been on and seminars and things we're doing. Anyone who fills out a form on that website, I will see it along with my operations and sales team.
Awesome. Brook Shepard, thank you so much for sharing time with me on Innovative Agency. And thanks to the rest of you for joining us today. And we will see you on the next episode. And everybody stay well until then. Take care.